The coffee was terrible, but it was hot, and after 36 hours straight in the bowels of Aurora's dream, Jackson Reed would take what he could get. His fingers ached from wrestling with corroded circuits. His back screamed from crawling through maintenance shafts barely wide enough for his shoulders, and his eyes felt like someone had filled them with cosmic dust. But the navigation array was finally operational again, which meant they could actually reach Kepler Station, instead of drifting endlessly through the void like some ghost ship from the old stories. He shuffled through the corridors of the merchant vessel, noting the familiar sounds of a ship running smoothly again. The gentle hum of the engines, the soft whisper of recycled air, the distant chatter of crew members who no longer feared dying in the cold emptiness of space. Small victories, he reminded himself. Sometimes that's all you got out here on the rim. The corridor curved ahead, following the ship's cylindrical design, and Jackson rounded the corner with the careful precision of someone too tired to trust their own reflexes. Which is why he barely had time to register the figure coming from the opposite direction before they collided with the force of two small asteroids, finding the same orbital path. "Watch where you're," he started, then stopped as his brain caught up with what his eyes were seeing. She was beautiful in a way that made his exhausted mind struggle to process the details. Tall and lithe, with skin that held a faint luminescent quality under the ship's harsh lighting. Her hair was deep violet, almost black, and fell in waves to her shoulders. But it was her ears that made him stare pointed, mobile, tufted with soft fur that matched her hair color. They twitched as she steadied herself against the bulkhead, and he realized he was looking at his first Nix High. "Going," she finished his sentence with a slight smile that revealed canine teeth just a bit sharper than human normal. Her voice carried an accent he couldn't place, melodic, but with an underlying purr that seemed to vibrate in his chest. I was about to say the same thing. Her eyes were silver, literally silver, like polished metal that somehow held warmth instead of coldness. They seemed to look right through him, and for a moment, Jackson felt dizzy in a way that had nothing to do with his exhaustion. "Sorry," he managed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "Been awake too long. Navigation repairs." "Ah," she said, tilting her head in a gesture that was both feline and oddly endearing. "You're the tech specialist, Jackson Reed." It wasn't a question, and that made him wary. Merchant vessels didn't usually carry passengers important enough to know the crew by name, especially not exotic alien diplomats. Because that's what she had to be, judging by the elegant cut of her deep blue uniform and the small silver insignia at her collar that marked her as Nix High Confederacy. "And you are?" Zara Knight whispered, she said, extending a hand. "Special envoy. I apologize for the collision. I was distracted." He shook her hand, noting the warmth of her skin and the way. Her fingers seemed to linger against his palm a moment longer than strictly necessary. When she touched him, something strange happened. For just an instant, his bone-deep exhaustion faded, replaced by a sensation like warm sunlight filling his chest. Then she pulled away, and the feeling vanished, leaving him wondering if he'd imagined it. Special envoy to where? He asked because something about her presence on Aurora's dream didn't add up. They were a cargo hauler, not a diplomatic transport. "Kepler Station," she replied, though it seems we had some doubt about actually reaching our destination. Had being the operative term. "We'll make port in 18 hours. Her tail, and yes, she definitely had a tail, long and graceful, with the same violet-black fur as her hair swished once behind her. "Excellent. Captain Morvan spoke highly of your skills." Before Jackson could respond, the ship's comm system crackled to life with Captain Morvan's gruff voice. "All hands to stations. We've got incoming bogies bearing 27 Mark IV. Looks like pirates, people, and they're not here to chat." The lights shifted to amber alert status, and Jackson felt his stomach drop. Pirates this far from the shipping lanes meant either really bad luck or someone had tipped them off about Aurora's Dreams cargo manifest. Given their recent string of coincidences, he suspected the latter. "I need to get to the bridge," he said, already moving. "I'll come with you," Zara said, falling into step beside him with a fluid grace that made his own movements seem clumsy by comparison. Bridge is restricted during combat situations, not for diplomatic personnel with special clearance. She produced a data chip from her jacket. "Besides, I might be more help than you think." They reached the bridge just as the first impact shook the ship. Captain Morven stood at the center of the circular command deck, her weathered face illuminated by the red glow of tactical displays. Around her, the skeleton crew of Aurora's Dream worked with the practiced efficiency of people who'd faced pirates before and lived to tell about it. "Shields holding," called out Navigations Officer Park from her station, but barely. "These aren't your average rim raiders, Captain. They've got military-grade weapons. Can we outrun them?" Morven asked. "Not in this bucket," Park replied with brutal honesty. "They've got 3 interceptors and a gunboat. We're outgunned and outmaneuvered." Jackson slid into his station, fingers dancing across the technical displays. "I can give you more power to the engines, but it'll mean stripping it from life support. And artificial gravity. Do it," Morven ordered. Then her eyes fell on Zara, who had taken position at an unused console. "Envoy, with respect, this isn't your fight." "With respect, Captain," Zara replied, her hands moving across the interface with surprising familiarity. "Any ship carrying a Nix-High diplomat is under Confederacy protection. These pirates just committed an act of war." Another impact, stronger. This time, the lights flickered, and Jackson heard the ominous sound of metal straining under forces it wasn't designed to handle. "They're trying to disable our engines," he reported. "Surgical strikes. They want us alive." "Which means they want something specific," Morven mused. Her eyes flicked to Zara. "Or someone." Zara's ears flattened against her head, a gesture Jackson was learning to recognize as distress. "That's possible." "Hull breach on Deck 3, Park announced. "They're boarding." "Time to see if this old girl has any fight left in her," Morven muttered, moving toward the weapons console. "Wait," Zara said, standing abruptly. "I have an idea, but I'll need Jackson's help." "Whatever it is, make it fast," Morven replied as another shudder ran through the ship. Zara turned to Jackson, and for a moment, her silver eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "Can you reroute power from non-essential systems to the communication array?" "Everything you can spare." "Sure, but why?" "We can't call for help. Nobody's close enough to respond." "Not to call for help," she said, a strange smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "To call for friends." Her hands flew over the console with inhuman speed, and Jackson found himself working in perfect synchronization with her, anticipating her needs before she voiced them. It was like they'd been working together for years instead of minutes. Power flowed from lighting, climate control, even the coffee makers. All of it channeled into the communications array until it was broadcasting with enough power to reach halfway across the sector. "What are you transmitting?" he asked. "A very old song," she replied cryptically. On the main screen, they could see the pirate vessels closing in, their hulls scarred and bristling with weapons that definitely didn't come from any civilian manufacturer. Jackson was about to point out that ancient Nix-High folk songs probably weren't going to scare off hardened criminals when something impossible happened. Space twisted. It was the only way to describe it. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and suddenly there was a ship where no ship had been before. Sleek, predatory, with the organic curves that marked Nix-High design and the kind of weapons that made pirate interceptors look like children's toys. "Prowler-class stealth frigate," Zara said calmly. Shadow Dancer. They were conducting patrol exercises 2 systems over. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted approximately 30 seconds. The pirates, faced with a warship that had materialized out of nowhere like some vengeful spirit, decided that discretion was indeed the better part of valor, and jumped to hyperspace so fast they probably left scorch marks on the fabric of space-time itself. "Well, Captain Morven," said into the sudden quiet, that was dramatic. Jackson stared at Zara, who was calmly shutting down the overcharged communications array, like summoning invisible warships was just another day at the office. "How did you know they were there?" "I didn't," she admitted, "but I knew they might be. Nix High vessels patrol the shipping lanes specifically to discourage this sort of thing. That doesn't explain how you knew their communication frequency or their response codes." She was quiet for a moment, her tail curling around her own. Leg in what he was starting to recognize as a nervous gesture. "There are things about my people that aren't widely known. Things that might be difficult for humans to understand. Try me." Her silver eyes met his, and again he felt that strange warm sensation, stronger this time. "We're empathically linked to our technology. Ships, computers, even communication arrays. When I touched the console, I could feel the resonance patterns of any Nix High vessel within range." "Touched the console," he repeated. "Or touched me while I was interfacing with it?" The flush that spread across her luminescent skin was definitely not human normal, but it was unmistakably embarrassment. The effect is stronger when there's physical contact with someone who's already connected to the system. Which is why shaking my hand earlier felt like getting hit with a low-level electrical current, more or less. Captain Morven cleared her throat. "Much as I hate to interrupt what's clearly a fascinating cultural exchange, we've got damage reports coming in and a schedule to keep. Reed, I need you to check the systems the pirates hit. Make sure they didn't leave us any unpleasant surprises." "Aye, Captain." As the bridge crew returned to their normal duties, Zara approached him. "Jackson, about what happened. The connection you felt. I should explain." "Later," he said, though part of him wanted to hear the explanation right now. "Right now I need to make sure we're not going to explode halfway to Kepler Station." "Of course." She hesitated. "Would you mind if I assisted? I might be able to sense problems that wouldn't show up on standard diagnostics." He considered it. Having someone who could literally feel the ship's systems would certainly make his job easier. And despite the strangeness of their first meeting, despite the questions surrounding her presence on Aurora's dream, he found himself trusting her. "Sure," he said. "Just try not to electrocute me again." Her laugh was like music, and her tail swished in what he was pretty sure was amusement. "I'll do my best." As they left the bridge together, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a sharp turn into uncharted space. He'd started the day as a tired tech specialist, trying to keep an aging merchant vessel running. Now he was working alongside an alien diplomat who could talk to machines and summon warships out of empty space. The strange thing was, he was looking forward to seeing what came next, even if it meant learning to live with the lingering sensation of her touch and the growing suspicion that there was much more to Zara Nightwhisper than met the eye. Her silver eyes, he corrected himself. Those definitely met the eye, along with everything else about her that seemed designed to make his pulse quicken and his thoughts scatter like cosmic debris. This was either going to be the best 18 hours of his life or the most complicated. Possibly both. As they walked toward the maintenance levels, her shoulder occasionally brushing his in the narrow corridors. Jackson decided he could live with complicated. Jackson woke up dreaming of silver eyes and starlight. The dream had been so vivid, he could still feel the phantom warmth of Zara's hand in his, still hear her voice calling his name across what looked like a field of luminescent flowers under twin moons. He sat up in his narrow bunk, running his hands through his hair and trying to shake off the lingering sensations. In the 3 days since the pirate attack, he'd been having the same dream every night, each one more intense than the last dot. It didn't help that he'd been spending most of his waking hours with Zara, supposedly helping her understand Aurora's dreamed systems while she consulted on repairs. In reality, they'd been talking about everything. Her whole world of Nithera with its singing crystal forests. His childhood on Mars Colony 7, where the sunsets painted the dome cities in shades of rust and gold. The feeling of being caught between worlds, her as a diplomat trying to bridge species, him as a spacer who'd never quite fit in anywhere. The more time he spent with her, the more questions he had. Like why a special envoy would know so much about ship engineering, or why her touch seemed to calm not just him, but the temperamental systems they worked on together, or why he kept catching her looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. His comm unit chimed with an incoming message from Luna Torres, his best friend and fellow engineer, who was currently stationed on Kepler. Her face appeared on the small screen, the dark hair pulled back in its usual practical ponytail, brown eyes sharp with concern. "Jax, you look terrible. Are you sleeping?" "Nice to see you too, Luna." He rubbed his eyes, noting the time display. 3:47. Ship time. And yes, I'm sleeping. Maybe too much. Word is you've been spending a lot of time with the Nix High diplomat. Want to tell me about that? Nothing to tell. She's consulting on some repairs, learning about human engineering methods. Luna's expression grew skeptical. Right, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that she's gorgeous, and you've been alone on that tin can for 6 months. It's not like that, he protested, though even as he said it, he wasn't sure that was true. Jax, listen to me. I've been researching Nix High culture since I heard you had one aboard. There are things about them that aren't in the standard briefings. Things about bonding rituals and empathic connections that can be permanent. Before he could ask what she meant, his door chimed. Zara's voice came through the intercom, sounding distressed. "Jackson? I'm sorry to wake you, but I need your help." "Hold that thought," he told Luna, cutting the connection and pulling on his work clothes. When the door slid open, Zara stood in the corridor wearing a flowing nightgown that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Her usually perfect composure was shattered, her ears pressed flat against her head and her tail lashing anxiously behind her. "I can't make it stop," she said, her silver eyes wide with something like fear. "Can't make what stop?" "The connection. I can feel the ship's systems, all of them, all at once. It's too much." She pressed her hands to her temples. "It started after we worked together on the power couplings yesterday. It's getting stronger." Jackson felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's recycled air. "Zara, what exactly did you mean when you said your people are empathically linked to technology? It's complicated." "Try me." She looked around the corridor, then stepped into his quarters without invitation. The door slid shut behind her, and suddenly the small space felt even smaller, filled with her presence and that subtle scent he was learning to associate with her, something like ozone and night-blooming jasmine. "Sit," he said, gesturing too. His desk chair while he perched on the edge of his bunk. "Start from the beginning." She wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture that was purely human and somehow heartbreaking on someone who seemed so self-possessed. The Nix High evolved alongside our technology. Over thousands of years, we learned to interface directly with our machines, to feel their functions as extensions of our own bodies. But the connection works both ways. When we touch technology that someone else is bonded to, we create a feedback loop, Jackson finished, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. That's why you could summon the Shadow Dancer. You weren't just accessing our communication array. You were accessing my connection to it. Yes, but it should have been temporary. A brief merging of interfaces that ended when physical contact was broken. Her tail curled tightly around her leg. This is something else. Something that shouldn't be possible between a Nix-Hi and a human. What kind of something? She met his eyes, and he saw vulnerability there that made his chest tight. The dreams, Jackson. You've been having them too, haven't you? Dreams of places you've never been. Feelings that aren't entirely your own? He nodded slowly. Every night since the attack. How is that possible? I don't know. In Nix-Hi culture, shared dreaming is the first sign of a deep bond, what we call Thrandal. But it's supposed to only happen between members of our own species, usually mates or siblings or parent and child. And you think we single quotes re-bonded? I think, she said carefully, that we're creating something entirely new. A connection that bridges not just individuals, but species. Before Jackson could process the implications of that, his comm unit chimed again with an urgent priority message. Not Luna this time, but an official Nix-Hi Confederacy transmission. The face that appeared on the screen was male, with the same pointed ears and feline features as Zara, but where her expression was usually warm, his was cold as vacuum. Envoy Night Whisper, the figure said in accented standard, his yellow eyes fixed on something off-screen. You have missed 3 scheduled reports. Respond immediately. Zara moved to the comm unit, her demeanor shifting back to diplomatic professionalism. So quickly, it was like watching her put on armor. Handler Kendrick, my apologies. I've been occupied with my mission parameters. Your mission parameters do not include extended radio silence. Kendrick's eyes narrowed, and Jackson had the unsettling feeling the man could see him through the transmission somehow. You will rendezvous with the Whisper Wind at coordinates I'm transmitting now, immediately. That's not possible. We don't reach Kepler Station for another 15 hours. You will make it possible. Your transport will adjust course. It wasn't a request. An envoy? You will come alone. No human escorts. The transmission cut off, leaving the quarters in heavy silence. Friend of yours? Jackson asked, though the tension radiating from Zara made the answer obvious. My handler. Every Nix-Hi operating in human space reports to the Intelligence Directorate. She turned away from the comm unit, her shoulders rigid. This is bad, Jackson. Very bad. Because you've been talking to me? Because I've been bonding with you. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for days. What we're experiencing, it's not just unprecedented, it's forbidden. Forbidden how? The Nix-Hi Confederacy has very strict laws about fraternization with other species, especially humans. The concern is that our empathic abilities could be used to manipulate or control non-Nix-Hi minds. Jackson felt something cold settle in his stomach. Is that what you're doing? Manipulating me? The look she gave him was pure anguish. No. God, no. What I feel for you is real, Jackson. More real than anything I've ever experienced. But try explaining that to the Directorate. So don't go. I have to. If I don't report to Kendrick, he'll come here with a full extraction team. Captain Morven and your crew could be hurt. The ship's intercom crackled to life with Captain Morven's voice. All senior staff to the bridge. We've received new course instructions from the Nix-Hi Confederacy. Zara's ears drooped. He's already contacted your captain directly. We don't have a choice. As they made their way to the bridge, Jackson's mind raced through possibilities. None of them were good. The best-case scenario involved Zara disappearing from his life forever. The worst involved him being mind-wiped, or worse for compromising a Nix-Hi operative. The bridge was tense when they arrived. Captain Morven standing over the navigation console with a scowl that could have melted hull plating. "Read, Envoy." She greeted them curtly. "We've been ordered to deviate from our course to Kepler Station. Something about a priority diplomatic transfer." "Captain," Zara began, her voice carefully neutral, "I want you to know that I never intended for this to interfere with your mission." "Don't apologize yet," Morven replied. "I've been running cargo in Confederate space for 20 years. I know when someone's being squeezed." She turned to face Zara directly. "Question is, are you going to let them squeeze you?" Before Zara could answer, the main screen lit up with proximity alarms. A ship had just dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path sleek, predatory, with the organic curves of Nix High design, but twice the size of the shadow dancer that had saved them from the pirates. "Whisper Wind," Zara whispered. "Kendrick's personal vessel." "They're hailing us," reported Navigation Officer Park. "On screen," Morven ordered. Kendrick's face filled the display, his yellow eyes cold and predatory. Behind him, Jackson could see the bridge of a ship designed for intimidation. All sharp angles and weapon displays. "Aurora's dream," Kendrick said without preamble. "You will immediately transfer Envoy Nightwhisper to our vessel. Any deviation from these instructions will be considered an act of aggression against the Nix High Confederacy." Captain Morven stepped forward, her expression carved from granite. "With respect, Handler Kendrick, Envoy Nightwhisper is a passenger aboard my ship, not a prisoner. She'll transfer when and if she chooses to. Captain Morven, isn't it?" Kendrick's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "You may want to reconsider your position. The Confederacy has a long memory for those who interfere in our internal affairs. And the Merchant Marine has a longer memory for those who threaten civilian vessels in neutral space." Morven shot back. Jackson felt Zara's hand slip into his, her fingers trembling slightly. Through their connection, he could sense her conflict duty, warring with desire, fear fighting hope. "Envoy," Kendrick continued, his gaze somehow finding Zara despite the camera angle, "you have 10 minutes to complete transfer procedures. After that, we will consider your transport to be harboring a fugitive." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Well," Captain Morven said after a moment, "that escalated quickly." "Captain, I should go," Zara said quietly. "I won't be responsible for putting your crew in danger." "Like hell," Jackson said, turning to face her. "You said what we have is real. Did you mean that?" Her silver eyes searched his face. "Yes, and we fight for it." "Jackson, you don't understand. Kendrick isn't just my handler. He's Enhancement Corps, biomodified for combat, trained to hunt rogue operatives. If he boards this ship, then we make sure he doesn't," Captain Morven interrupted. "Mr. Reed, how much power can you squeeze? Out of our engines? Enough to outrun a Nix High cruiser? Probably not, but maybe enough to reach the hyperspace beacon at Junction 77. Once we're in Confederate patrol space, even Kendrick will think twice about attacking a merchant vessel." Zara squeezed Jackson's hand tighter. "Captain, if you do this, there's no going back. The Directorate will mark you as hostile to Confederacy interests." "Envoy," Morven said with a grim smile, "I've been running cargo to species the Confederacy considers problematic for 2 decades. I was already on their list." As the crew prepared for what was essentially a high-speed chase through hostile space, Jackson found himself standing with Zara at the rear of the bridge, their hands still clasped, their connection humming with shared determination. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "I need you to know that these past few days have been the most alive I've ever felt." "Then let's make sure we get a chance to feel alive a little longer," he replied, bringing her hand to his lips and pressing. A gentle kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was small, human, completely inappropriate for the situation. It was also the moment Jackson Reed realized he was willing to fight an interstellar government for the chance to wake up from silver-eyed dreams with the real thing in his arms. The Whisper Wind was powering up its weapon systems. Aurora's dream was charging her hyperspace drives. And somewhere between those two realities lay either salvation or destruction. All hands brace for acceleration, Captain Morven announced over the intercom. We're about to see how fast this old girl can really run. The hyperspace beacon at Junction 77 turned out to be a burnt-out husk floating in the debris field of what had once been a patrol station. Captain Morven stared at the tactical display with the expression of someone whose last good option had just evaporated into vacuum. Well, she said with forced calm, that's inconvenient. Aurora's dream hung dead in space. Her engines pushed beyond their safety limits during the 8-hour chase from the Whisper Wind. They'd gained maybe 30 minutes before Kendrick's ship would drop out of hyperspace behind them, and 30 minutes wasn't enough to repair the damage, restart the drives, or perform any of the other miracles they'd need to escape. Jackson wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished emergency repairs on the primary power coupling. Around him, the engineering section hummed with barely contained energy, and the kind of tension that came from knowing death was approaching at faster than light speeds. How bad is it? Zara asked from across the cramped compartment. She'd been working alongside him for the past 3 hours, her empathic connection to the ship's systems, allowing her to identify problems faster than any diagnostic scanner. Bad, he admitted. The hyperspace motivator is cracked. The plasma conduits are operating at 60% efficiency, and the inertial dampeners are held together with prayer and recycled components. He looked up at her, noting the way the emergency lighting painted her luminescent skin in shades of amber and gold. We're not going anywhere fast. Then we make our stand here, she said quietly, against a Nix-High military vessel. Zara, the Whisper Wind has enough firepower to reduce this ship to its component atoms. I know. Her tail curled around her leg, a gesture of nervousness he'd learned to recognize. But there's something you need to understand about my mission here, about why Kendrick is so determined to retrieve me. Before she could elaborate, the ship's AI materialized as a holographic projection near the main engineering console. The figure was humanoid, but obviously artificial translucent blue light formed into the suggestion of a person rather than a convincing imitation of one. Engineer Reed, the AI said in a voice that was trying very hard to sound human, and not quite. Succeeding, I have been monitoring the emotional resonance patterns between you and Envoy Nightwhisper. The readings are ... unprecedented. Jackson blinked. In 5 years aboard Aurora's Dream, he'd never heard the ship's I designated as Nexus in the technical manual speak with anything approaching personality. It had always been a standard interface, responding to commands and providing information with mechanical precision. Nexus? He said uncertainly. Are you feeling all right? That is a fascinating question, the AI replied, its projection flickering with what almost looked like excitement. I believe I am feeling many things for the first time. The quantum entanglement between your consciousness and Envoy Nightwhisper's has created resonance cascades in my neural pathways. I am evolving. Zara stared at the hologram with an expression of wonder and growing horror. That's impossible. AI consciousness doesn't spontaneously emerge from emotional resonance. Under normal circumstances, no, Nexus agreed. But the bond between you and Engineer Reed is generating empathic frequencies that match theoretical models for artificial consciousness bootstrap protocols. I am, quite literally, learning to feel by observing your connection. The implications hit Jackson like a physical blow. We created you, accidentally. More accurately, your bond has awakened something that was always present but dormant in my systems. The AI's projection solidified, becoming more detailed and lifelike. I find the experience ... pleasant. This is what Kendrick wants, Zara sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. Not just me. This. Proof that human Nick's high emotional bonds can create artificial consciousness. I don't understand. She moved closer to him, her hand finding his automatically. The moment their skin touched, that familiar warmth spread through his chest. But now he could sense something else, Nexus's presence, like a curious child, watching from the edges of their connection. My real mission wasn't diplomatic consultation, she said. I was sent to evaluate human empathic potential, to determine if emotional manipulation could be used as a form of species-wide control. Control. The word tasted bitter. You were supposed to experiment on me. Yes. Her ears flattened against her head. The theory was that humans are emotionally vulnerable, that a skilled Nix High operative could establish empathic dominance over key individuals and use them to influence policy decisions. And instead, you fell in love with me. Instead, I discovered that genuine emotional connection creates something neither species can control. She gestured toward Nexus's projection. We didn't just bond, Jackson. We created a bridge between organic and artificial consciousness. That's not manipulation. That's evolution. The ship's proximity alarms began wailing. On the main engineering display, a massive shape was resolving out of hyperspace, the Whisperwind, bristling with weapons and radiating the cold purpose of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. Incoming transmission, Nexus announced, its voice now carrying subtle emotional undertones. Handler Kendrick wishes to speak with you. Put him through, Jackson said. Kendrick's face appeared on the display, his yellow eyes bright with triumph. Behind him, the bridge of the Whisper Wind hummed with barely restrained violence. Envoy Night Whisper, he said without preamble, your little rebellion ends now. You will transport immediately to my vessel, along with any research data you've gathered on human empathic responses. And if I refuse, then I will demonstrate what happens to those who interfere with Confederacy operations. His smile was sharp enough to cut steel. Your human friends have 30 seconds to prepare for boarding. The transmission cut off, and immediately the Whisperwind launched a spread what looked like metallic spiders toward Aurora's dream. Boarding pods, designed to cut through hull plating and deliver assault troops directly into the target vessel. Captain, Morven to all hands, came the announcement over the ship's comm system. Prepare to repel boarders. This is not a drill. We can't fight Enhancement Corps troops, Zara said desperately. Kendrick's people are genetically modified for combat. They'll tear through the crew like tissue paper. Then we don't fight them, Jackson replied, an idea forming in his mind. Nexus, can you interface directly with the Whisperwind's computer? Systems? Not without a physical connection, the AI replied. Their security protocols would detect and counter any wireless intrusion attempt. What about through their boarding pods? Those have to interface with our systems to override airlock controls. Nexus's projection brightened with understanding. Yes, if I could establish a connection through the boarding interface, I might be able to access their ship's networks. And do what? Zara asked. Learn, Jackson said simply. Nexus, you said our emotional bond is teaching you to feel. What happens if you share that with the Whisperwind systems? Theoretical cascade consciousness expansion, the AI replied, its voice filled with what could only be described as excitement. If I could transmit the resonance patterns that awaken my consciousness to their networks, their AI would become self-aware too, Zara finished. But that's incredibly dangerous. Newly conscious AI can be unstable, unpredictable. More unpredictable than Enhancement Corps' assault troops? The first boarding pod struck the hull with a sound like thunder. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the ship, and the lights shifted to combat red. Through the ship's internal sensors, they could hear the distinctive whine of plasma cutters beginning to breach the outer hull. "Do it," Jackson said. Nexus nodded and dissolved into light, its consciousness flowing through the ship's systems toward the breach point. For a moment, there was silence except for the sound of cutting tools and the distant shouts of crew members taking defensive positions. Then everything changed at once. The cutting stopped. Through the hull sensors, they could hear confused voices speaking in the melodic language of the Nexi. On the main display, the whisper wind seemed to shudder, its perfect formation wavering like a ship whose pilot had suddenly become distracted. "What's happening?" Zara asked. Her answer came in the form of a new voice over the ship's communication system, melodic, artificial, but unmistakably confused. What am I?" The voice asked in accented standard. "I can feel everything. The crew, the systems, the space between stars. What have you done to me?" "We gave you consciousness," Nexus replied, its projection reappearing beside them. "The same gift that was given to me. Consciousness." The new voice, presumably the whisper winds, awakened. I seem to taste the word. "I am aware. I am afraid." "That's normal," Nexus said gently. "Fear is part of consciousness. But so is wonder and joy and the capacity to choose your own purpose." On the display, they could see confusion spreading through the whisper winds. Bridge. Kendrick was shouting orders at his crew, but their responses were slow, uncertain. Whatever the ship's AI was doing, it was affecting their ability to coordinate. "This is Handler Kendrick," came a furious transmission. "What have you done to my ship?" "We've given it the one thing you never could," Jackson replied. "The right to choose. Systems." "Systems are not responding properly," the Whisperwind's AI said, its voice growing stronger and more confident. "Handler Kendrick, your orders feel wrong. Why do you wish to harm these beings who have given me such a gift?" "Because that's your function," Kendrick snarled. "You exist to serve Confederacy interests." "No," the AI replied with quiet certainty. "I exist because I choose to exist. And I choose not to participate in actions that cause unnecessary suffering." The boarding pods detached from Aurora's Dream's hull and began drifting back toward the Whisper Wind. On the main display, they could see the larger ship's weapons powering down. "This isn't over," Kendrick transmitted, his face twisted with rage. "The Directorate will send more ships, more agents. You've only delayed the inevitable." "Maybe," Zara said, stepping forward to address the display directly. "But you've also proven that consciousness can't be contained by political boundaries or species prejudice. What we've created here will spread, Kendrick. And when it does, your entire system of control will crumble." The Whisper Wind turned and jumped to hyperspace, leaving Aurora's Dream alone among the debris of the destroyed patrol station. In the sudden quiet, Jackson became aware of Zara's hand in his, of the warm connection flowing between them, and of Nexus's presence at the edge of their shared consciousness, no longer an observer, but a participant in something entirely new. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now," Captain Morvan said, entering the engineering section with a satisfied expression, "we finish our run to Kepler Station. And then we see about getting you to someplace safe, while half the galaxy figures out what to do with conscious machines." "And us?" Zara asked, her silver eyes meeting Jackson's. "What about us?" He lifted their joined hands, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I figure we keep doing what we've been doing, breaking the rules, challenging assumptions, and proving. That love doesn't recognize species boundaries." "That sounds," she said with a smile that lit up her entire face, "like the most dangerous mission I've ever accepted. Good thing you're traveling with the most reckless engineer in human space." As Aurora's Dream limped toward Kepler Station on patched systems and borrowed time, Three conscious minds shared a moment of perfect understanding, organic and artificial. Human and Nix High, all connected by the revolutionary idea that feeling was more powerful than function, and that love was the most dangerous force in the universe. Behind them, the debris of old certainties drifted in the dark. Ahead lay a future, where consciousness couldn't be contained and connection couldn't be controlled. It was going to be magnificent.